Not all cold plunges are created equal. If you ever struggle to find one that's both effective and easy to use, you're not alone. So let me share my experience with the Polar Monkey Start Treatment 2.0 and why it's become one of my go-to cold water immersion tubs. Now, as you watch this video and you think, well, Michael, I agree or I disagree with what you say, please let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think, because I read all of the comments and I reply to all the ones that, at least the ones that warrant a reply. So keep that in mind, please. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you know that cold plunging has been a game changer for my recovery and mental resilience. Over the years, I've tested a lot of different plunges, from inflatable tubs to high-end barrels. But when I tried the Start Treatment 2.0, I knew I had to share my experience, because this plunge delivers a lot of the benefits of higher-end plunges at a more reasonable price point. So stick with me and I'll share with you why that is. For me, the Start Treatment 2.0 isn't just another plunge barrel. It's a combination of thoughtful design, solid performance, and durability. And so in this video, I'll break down what I love about it and also share a few areas where I think it could be improved, and also how it fits into our daily recovery routine. And by our, I mean my wife's and I. So let me start with how I've been using the Start Treatment 2.0. I typically plunge either before working out or right after a sauna session. If I plunge before a workout, it's to help boost testosterone production and to help pre-cooling my mitochondria. Because typically when you fatigue, it's a result of overheating your mitochondria on a cellular level. And so by pre-cooling, I can delay that response and perform for longer. And that's why I really like doing it right before leaving for a workout. But a lot of the time, I use it after a sauna to cool down, reset, and to close my pores. And for me, cold plunging is about recreating experiences I've had in places like Norway. There we'd jump right from a steaming hot sauna into the freezing Arctic Ocean. Now, obviously, I don't have an Arctic Ocean in my backyard, but the Start Treatment 2.0 comes relatively close as far as allowing me to recreate that experience. That upright barrel-style design mimics that feeling of floating or treading in icy water, which makes the experience to me feel authentic and honestly pretty exhilarating. And my wife used to prefer water temperature around 48 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, but since our Norway trip, she transitioned to plunging at 33 to 35 degrees, so just above the freezing point, much like I do. And it's been awesome to see her embrace colder water, and it's become a shared part of our joint recovery routine. So let's talk about cooling power. The Start Treatment 2.0 is capable of making ice, and that's unique for a setup that uses an external chiller that circulates water. Now, it's not quite at the level of a plunge that uses cooling coils, copper coils wrapped around the barrel or the tub to cool the water, much like a freezer. Instead, it uses an external chiller to circulate water that's just above the freezing point, and then leverages the laws of physics and thermodynamics to allow the water on the surface of the barrel to freeze. Now, depending on ambient air temperatures and other factors, the thickness of the ice that you get may vary. In our case, we got I think it was roughly about 1/4 of an inch thick, but nonetheless, it's fairly fascinating to see how the chiller pumps in water that's not frozen yet, because otherwise it couldn't pump it, but then the water would still freeze on the surface. That's quite fascinating to kind of think that through and how that works from a physics perspective. And here is the thing, if you jump into water that's frozen, if there is ice in it, it kind of makes the whole experience, it changes the experience, because you feel really badass getting into water and you have ice floating around you. I really like that aspect. And that chiller can do it. That comes with the Start Treatment 2.0. That's unique, and it's the first external chiller that I've ever had that is capable of making ice, and I really like that. Now, when in ice making mode, I want to point out the water turnover or filtration is different than when the chiller is set to 35 degrees, which is the lowest you can set it without getting into ice making mode. And I'm pointing this out because there is, I guess, a benefit to letting it run at 35 degrees and having a higher water turnover, more filtration basically, especially sediment filtration, versus running it in ice making mode where you get the ice but less water movement overall. Because if you think about it, moving water freezes later. So the chiller intentionally reduces water flow to allow that surface to freeze over, but you get less water turnover as a result. Now, from a water quality perspective, running the chiller in ice making mode doesn't dramatically decrease water quality, because at that temperature, near the freezing point, there is no pathogen replication, no bacterial replication going on really. Everything is so, slowed down so that there is nothing bad growing in the water, and the water quality remains roughly the same. However, the sediment filtration is negatively impacted because water is turned over less often. So there's less water movement, less water volume going through the sediment filter, and so lint and other, debris basically doesn't get filtered out as well as if there is more water movement. And so, you kind of have to decide, do you want to see the ice and get that experience, or what do you want to have slightly higher water turnover and filtration and have a optically, cleaner looking water with less debris maybe in there. For me, the difference between 33-degree water and 35-degree water from a benefit perspective is somewhat comparable. So I don't really mind running it at 35 degree and getting more water turnover and more water movement, which might also make it feel a little bit colder because moving water breaks the thermal barrier. And so I think you get roughly the same benefits with a slightly improved water filtration performance. And that's why I typically run it at 35 degrees. But ultimately it's up to you. The system can make ice, that's unique to it, and it's fairly neat to see a solid layer of ice on top of your barrel when you get in. The chiller can also heat the water. That's another somewhat unique benefit of the Start Treatment 2.0, because with chillers I had in the past, if I wanted to increase water temperature, what I could do is I could dial in the higher temperature on the chiller, but that simply meant that the chiller would stop cooling the water until the ambient air would heat the water enough to the threshold before it would start cooling again. And the downside of that is that there is no water filtration, or not a whole lot of water filtration and turnover going on while the water is slowly warming up. With the Start Treatment 2.0, the system actively heats the water. So if I change from 35 degrees to 40 or 50 degrees, the water is circulated and heated as we go, which means I get much quicker to the desired temperature, and there is still water filtration going on. Now, you can set the system up to 170 degrees, which goes into hot tub territory, but I would argue if you really want to use the system as a dedicated hot tub, you'll probably get a bigger unit that can fit more people, not just yourself. And going from cold to hot, or from very cold to very hot, takes a while. You probably would have to let the system run overnight to get from 35 degrees to 107, and doing that back and forth is not really efficient. So I wouldn't necessarily use it as a combination cold and hot tub. I would set it to either one and leave it at that, or change it only every so often. But the capability is there. If that's what you want to do, you can turn it into a hot tub. Now, one of the things that I love most about the Start Treatment 2.0 is how it fits seamlessly into our backyard setup. The stainless steel interior is easy to clean and built to last. It's built like a tank basically, while the cedar wood exterior is both durable and beautiful. It smells incredible and gives the Plunge a polished, kind of natural look that complements the two saunas that you can see in the background. Now, what's cool about the barrel design is that it doesn't take up too much space. It's compact enough to blend into the patio while still being roomy enough for a full body submersion. For someone like me, I'm 6 feet tall. It's perfect for going all in, even dunking my head underwater. My wife, on the other hand, who is 4'11", finds it a bit more kind of challenging to get in and out. I mean, there is a step stool that makes it somewhat easy, but if you have mobility issues or are maybe elderly already, getting in and out of the tub might be a bit of a challenge, because you need to engage your upper body and upper body strength to get over the ledge, so to say, and step in. But the bottom line here is I really like it. It looks nice, it looks sleek, it doesn't require a lot of floor space, which is important to us because we review a lot of different saunas and cold plunges all the time, and we have several units set up at any given point, and we only have so much space. So the small footprint, while still providing enough internal volume, is something I really like, because it means full body immersion without taking up a lot of floor space. Now, maintaining the Start Treatment 2.0 is also refreshingly straightforward. Every couple of weeks I check the sediment filter. Typically that's on a bi-weekly schedule. Every 2 weeks I check on it, make sure from the outside it doesn't look brown and clogged up. If it does, I replace it. And it really depends on how much debris and stuff you allow to get into the tub. I typically cover it, and that reduces the amount of stuff that gets into the water that then ends up in the filter. But about every 2 weeks or so I check it, and every 4 weeks, 5 weeks or so, I replace the sediment filter. I also add a little bit of hydrogen peroxide to keep the water clean, which is an oxidizer, to oxidize any stuff that might be in there. Even though I should say the Star Treatment 2.0 does use a combination of ozone and sediment filtration to keep the water clean. Ozone is a very good, maybe the best way to keep water clean and to prevent any pathogens from growing in the water. So it has that built in, it has the sediment filter. But just to, in case if we do a lot of back-to-back plunging, I add a little bit of hydrogen peroxide every 2 weeks or so, and that keeps the water absolutely clean. And then every 6 months or so, I drain it and refill it. Now, when you fill the barrel, we have a whole house filtration system, so that all the water that goes into the barrel is already free of chlorine and some of the other toxins that are found in tap water. If you don't have a whole house filtration system, just get a simple charcoal filter you can screw onto your garden hose. You can find on Amazon. I'm going to link it down below as well. Those are typically used for RV systems, and that's the one I used in the past before we had the whole house filtration system to fill my barrels with clean water that has no chlorine and some of the other crap that I don't want to have on my skin. Now, while the Star Treatment 2.0 excels in most areas, there are a couple of things to be aware of. First is condensation. Condensation is a natural byproduct of temperature differentials, between the cold water in the tub that goes through the hoses and that gets pumped through the chiller and the ambient air temperature. I want to point out that both the barrel as well as the chiller were designed for indoor or outdoor use, so you can use it either way. We have it outdoor, but we've noticed that if the ambient air temperature is significantly higher than the water temperature, we see some condensation on the hoses as well as on some of the components inside of the chiller that handle the cold water, the freezing cold water in our case. And so we get some water of condensation dripping down and then running off. Now in our case, since it's outside on concrete, slanted away from the house, it's not a problem whatsoever. It's not a ton of water, but it's just a little bit that keeps dripping down from the hoses and from the non-insulated parts of the system. And if you use the chiller on the inside, or if you use that setup on the inside, I would recommend, if you have flooring that's not meant to be exposed to water, so if you have it on tile or concrete, probably doesn't matter, but if you have it, let's say, on a wood floor, I would recommend having a drip tray underneath the chiller. You can find those online to catch any water, and then it slowly evaporates, and then also either wrap the hoses or have something underneath the hoses, so if something drips down, it doesn't get on the wood floor and potentially damage the flooring. Again, it's not a whole lot of water, but it's enough that over time it can cause issues if the flooring that it's on is not meant to be in contact with water. The second thing is, and that's really a problem that only I had, you're not going to have that if you purchase the unit. The lid that my my barrel initially came with was a wooden lid, and it started warping after a while because of moisture in the air, as well as temperature changes. Here in Georgia we have very humid hot summers and then moderately cold winters that are fairly dry. And then later I got the insulated lid that your unit, if you decide to purchase one, will come with. So you're not going to have that issue, but I just want to point it out because you might see the older lid on some of the footage in the video here, or in some of the video footage here. So don't be alarmed. You're not going to get that lid. I got it initially, then got it replaced with the insulated lid that comes with the unit that you would get. And so no longer an issue, but I just wanted to point it out in case you see it in some of the B-roll footage. Now, both my wife and I use the Star Treatment 2.0 after sauna sessions and before workouts, as I mentioned before. And on some days, we plunge back to back, taking turns in the same tub. And now that's especially, that's more possible because in the past, my wife preferred higher temperatures, like 48 to 55 degrees. And that's no longer the case. Ever since our trip to Norway, where we plunged in the Arctic Ocean and it was cold, close to the freezing point, my wife adapted, became more resilient, and I think also something mentally switched in her head that she figured out she can actually do freezing temperatures. And now we plunge at the same temperature. That means we can do it back to back in the same barrel. We really like that. But in some cases, when we want to plunge together, like before a workout and we need to get going because we're already tight on time, we plunge in separate ones. And the Start Treatment is kind of more like hers, that is under more her control, and I touch and plunge in another one, and we do it together. But when we do it in the Start Treatment, back to back, it works really nicely. Same temperature, absolutely love it, and she does too. Now, from a pricing perspective, the Star Treatment 2.0 costs $6,000, which is not exactly inexpensive, but it does offer a lot for the price. Between its durable build, the effective cooling, the ice making capability, the heating capability, and the low maintenance design, it's a solid investment for anyone seriously about cold plunging. You know, for comparison, some of the inflatable plunges that I own cost $4,000 to $5,000, and some of the higher end stainless steel options go for well over $9,000. I mean, there are even plunges out there that cost $10,000, $13,000. And so if you decide to invest in a cold plunge from Polar Monkeys, you know, it's a solid kind of middle ground from a pricing perspective, with a lot of the high-end premium features, the stainless steel top, the cedar wood, the very performant chiller, all of that you get for a fairly reasonable price, comparatively speaking. But if you do decide to invest in one of those plunges, be it the Star Treatment 2.0 or maybe one of the other plunges that Polar Monkeys offer, make sure to use my discount code that gets you a discount. I'm going to link all of that down below in the description. You can check that out and use it. That helps you, that helps me. Overall, I want to say that the Star Treatment 2.0 has become a cornerstone of our recovery routine. Whether we are plunging after a sauna session or prepping for a workout, it delivers a consistent and reliable experience, and it's super easy to maintain, and I really like that. Now, if you're considering a cold plunge and want something that's durable, easy to maintain, and visually impressive, this is definitely a great choice. So check it out. Let me know. If you want to learn even more about the Star Treatment 2.0, all of the stuff that I couldn't cover in this video, check out my detailed review on michaelkummer.com. It goes into even more details and in-depth about the pros and cons, all of the stuff that I couldn't cover in this video, so check that out definitely. And if you're experimenting with cold plunging or just getting started, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Really, let me know in the comments, what tubs, or do you prefer a tub or a barrel, and why that is? What's your ideal water temperature? Have you started with cold showers? Do you have any experience with cold plunging? Any questions you have, let me know in the comments. I read them all, as I mentioned initially, and I love to help out and reply. Please engage with this video, like it, subscribe, do all the things you can do to help others see this video as well. That's very important for the Google algorithm. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.